We've all got issues to work on. And sometimes these issues could have been formed by things that happened to us in the past. And lately, I haven't really felt my best. The situation is nowhere near the levels of depression that I experienced in the past, but it's at the same time not really the levels that I want to be in. So besides meditating, I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to try out different ways to improve my well-being. And this first one is going to be therapeutic journaling. And let me tell you, I actually recorded this entire video 4 freaking times. And doing it once was hard enough, honestly, because this isn't the most comfortable topic to talk about. But I just really believed that it was so useful, so I recorded again and again until I got it right. And from the research done on this journaling protocol, it seems to really help with things like mood, psychological well-being, and depressive symptoms, but also seems to improve physical functioning, in particular things like immune function. This form of journaling was created by Dr. James Pennebaker in the 1980s. Basically, this therapeutic journaling protocol entails that we call to mind our most traumatic or difficult experience, and we write about it for 15 to 30 minutes without any interruptions at all. Full instructions are in the description below if you want to check them out. And trauma is a word that gets thrown around a lot nowadays, and I thought it would be best to define it first. So psychiatrist Dr. Paul Conti, who has done lots of research on trauma, defines it as any experience or experiences such that we do not function as well behaviorally or cognitively moving forward from that experience. And to really try this out properly, I needed to call to mind a difficult experience of my own. And the event that stuck out the most to me was my first big heartbreak. And this not only was devastating for me emotionally, it also really changed the way I approached romantic relationships and interests moving forward. And of course, out of respect for the person involved, I'll try not to go into any identifying details. And so, in short, I fell for someone who I was really close to. And at the time, I didn't have any close relationships with girls, and I had no experience with that. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions when they came. And when I did try to express my emotions, things fell apart for one reason or another. And there are no hard feelings now. I don't want to blame anyone. I'm not pointing any fingers, but I just want to recognize these things do happen, not just to me, but to people around me as well. And people from all over the place. This is quite a normal thing that happens. And when I was preparing to jump into the journaling exercise, and when I was recalling my painful experience, I started to feel a lot of emotions. I started to cry a little bit because I realized that after all this time, the fear of rejection and fear of that pain that I experienced it still hadn't gone away. Like, I was still feeling these things now in a similar-ish situation. When writing, I recalled the context of the situation, the conversations that I remember having, and the feelings that I had after those conversations, and also a little bit of reflection on why I felt these feelings. I feel like even as a highly reflective person, writing about my experience in this way helped me to learn more about why I felt the way I did and gave my feelings a sense of justice. As I continued writing, I slowly started to relate the issues that I had in the past to what I'm going through right now in the present. And I felt a little bit of panic. My heart started racing really quickly, and I was just really scared that after all this time, I still didn't learn my lesson from my past experience. But when these kinds of feelings of panic or depression, melancholy start to invade my mind space, then I'm already kind of trained to look at it in a more objective sense and stop taking these emotions so personally. So I realized then that just because I had these feelings doesn't mean that I was still the same person I was back then, because I definitely am not. It's okay to have these feelings. It was just a conditioned reaction because of what happened in the past. I just realized that my mental tendencies were taking me on the same old train ride, that I felt like I was not enough, and I felt that I needed to get some validation from the girl I liked. But I know now that life doesn't always go the way we want it to. And that's okay. That's just how things go. We just have to learn how to ride the waves, how to temper our desires, and accept them as they are, without being too attached to them. So this exercise reminded me that unlike the past, I now have the tools to get my emotions and my mind under control. And I was reminded that it's time to practice using these tools. So for me personally, my difficulties have mainly revolved around romantic relationships. So on this second day, I wrote more about my experiences of failed relationships in the past. I wrote about the conversations and the situations that ultimately led to the same feeling of disappointment that I experienced again and again. Interestingly, it didn't evoke too many negative emotions in me. And I knew even before writing that my main source of pain in my life has always been caused by this compounding belief that I was unworthy. And this belief has always been propagated and compounded by things like failing in relationships and having been rejected again and again and again. But as I was writing, I didn't feel like I was unworthy. I just felt like these things that happened, they were just facts, and they were things that I could just learn about and accept. And this second day of journaling really felt like meditation a little bit, as I was outlining all the things that happened, all the feelings that I had, without accepting the narrative that these feelings entailed. And when I finished writing, I feel like it was so much easier to accept everything that had happened. And I always thought that I had an outlet of my friends to express my feelings out to. And I was always under the impression that I did express my emotions when I needed to. But I noticed that writing in this way, when anything that pops up in your mind goes onto the paper, when everything is unfiltered, it's completely different from building a somewhat coherent narrative that we tell to our friends to express our emotions. And more importantly, it may not necessarily tap into everything that we experience in its raw form. And journaling in this way is, I think, quite akin to breaking down a concept into its first principles, into its most basic concepts. It paints a clearer picture of the different components of our subjective experience and allows us to understand our emotions and feelings more deeply. So this second day brought about a very surprising, yet very welcome, sense of catharsis. So for this final day, I wrote about my most recent difficult experience, which of course, has to do with relationships again. So there was a 4-year gap between the events that I wrote about on day 2 and today. And during this 4-year gap, I didn't have any feelings for anyone. And I was just working on myself, doing my own thing with school and with work. And I couldn't really recall any difficult experience that I could write about in this 4 years. Coincidence? I don't know. Basically, today I wrote about another relationship which didn't necessarily develop into something that I wanted. And because these things are so fresh in my mind, I first wrote about all of the things that I wanted to happen with this person. And these were things that I thought about pretty frequently and very recently. And maybe it was because I haven't really had feelings for anyone in the past 4 years. I maybe forgot how to handle these emotions, and I've let these emotions run wild. I've let myself ruminate a little more than I would like. But after the past 2 days of journaling, I did definitely feel more ready to face these emotions and even to let them go. And in my writing, as I transformed all the recollections, desires, and fantasies into paper, I realized that the imagined happiness that I wanted, that I thought I would gain from these desires, they were all nonsense. It became so plain to see that my fantasies could never translate into real happiness in life, in any situation. And for months, my mind put on these rose-colored glasses, imagining a future that would be so comforting and so healing for me. But really, it was all bullshit. And recalling all the things that happened with her, recalling all the things that happened to me in recent years, all the things that I've learned, all the things that I've done, I felt that I was just comfortable with where I was right now, even if that meant that I was alone. And I know that moving forward, maybe 1 or 2 weeks after this journaling experience, I might slip up. I might have these feelings brew inside of me again, and I might be caught up in them as more than I would like to. But that's okay, because I know my underlying belief, and that everything is fine the way it is. And sure, I was definitely disappointed that things couldn't work out between us. Maybe a little bit disappointed now still. But these past 3 days have really helped me to feel ready to move on. So all in all, this journaling shone a more objective light onto what I actually experienced and how that affected me in life, without all the illusory narrative bullshit that usually comes with ruminating on these experiences. And yeah, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of rejection that really affected my self-esteem. But this exercise really helped me to remind myself that there was so much learning that went on in that pain, in that rejection. I would not trade that learning for any of the relationships that would have or that I wanted to manifest. And things like meditation does help to bring me to a state of mind of acceptance and gratitude for all the things that have gone by. But I admit I don't meditate as often as I should, and sometimes that state of peace doesn't last as long as I wanted to as well. So this journaling exercise has been a great supplement to my meditation practice. And so this was just my experience with therapeutic journaling. Your experience might be completely different. You might feel a lot more emotion, you might feel a lot less emotion. And whichever camp you fall into, you'll still benefit from this practice, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. And this might even last for weeks or even months moving forward from this experience. If the trauma that you call to mind for this experience is really overwhelming for you, too overwhelming that you really shut down as a result of thinking of that experience, then please feel free to pick another difficult experience, another experience that you would like to work towards accepting. And it's okay to not be able to, jump into the deep end of the pool, because everyone's different. Everyone works through their experiences, through their difficulties at their own time. So take your time, take it step by step. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. But yeah, honestly, I wouldn't have made this video if this journaling was not helpful for me. Like, it's not fun for me to recall all of these experiences again. But I really think that this exercise is helpful. So if you do feel like you want to try it, please do. And I'd love to hear about your experiences with it. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.